And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and we got some more new Capenna cards to talk about here. And I'm going to do something that I don't normally do, which is to talk about cards that aren't commanders. Typically, I talk about the commanders while we're talking about spoilers, because I think they're most impactful in the format. But there's two cards here that I want to talk about that came out on the first official day of spoilers that I think are going to be incredibly impactful in the format. They are commander staples right away, right out of the gate, in my opinion. So let's get to it. First off, an offer you can't refuse. Great name for the card, first of all. 1 blue mana instant, counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. Does this trump Swan Song as far as a commander staple goes? I think it does. You could make an argument of why Swan Song's better, right? It's going to only give your opponent a 2/2 flyer. That's probably, I would say treasure tokens is probably a little bit better than giving your opponent a 2/2 flyer, but not by much. But the big thing here is an offer you can't refuse is going to counter a non-creature spell, right? So it's going to get artifacts, which Swan Song won't get. It's going to get planeswalkers, which Swan Song won't get. I say all the time, I've said it on my channel probably 20 times at least. For me, it's the non-creature spells that I really worry about. Yes, there are a few creatures out there that you want to get with the counterspell from time to time, but typically for me, the non-creature spells is what I want to counter, and this gets all of them. This gets every non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. Okay. That's a really fair trade-off, in my opinion, for only 1 blue mana. Like, I imagine, I don't know what it's going to be like, the hype around this card. I think it's an absolute commander staple right now. I think it replaces Swan Song, and, you know, I mean, and Swan Song has gotten to be a really expensive card. So I think this probably, yeah, replaces Swan Song. And for a lot of people, even in a CEDH game, this might be, I would imagine this is probably going to get played a lot in CEDH as well. Might get played in Modern, you know, it's going to get played in other formats as well. Hopefully it doesn't get too pricey. Am I overreacting? I don't think I am. 1 blue mana to counter a non-creature spell? That's amazing, right? With no limitations, right? This is not like a spell snare where there's limitations on it. There is no limitations here. This is just a hard counter spell for non-creature spells. And again, in a commander game, like 80% of the time, if I counter something, I'm not a big counterspell guy, but when I do, it's going to be countering a non-creature spell. So this is now going to go in all my blue decks, I think. It is right up there with one of my favorite counterspells in the format already, I think. The other card I want to talk about is a mono white one, Rumor Gatherer. And again, I think this is going to be a commander staple for sure. 1 white elf wizard 2/1 has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. So I'm eating my words a little bit here because I've already talked about on several occasions how I think white has enough card draw already, or it's doing okay, right? It's not like fantastic, but it's doing okay. This is another great option for that. And also, I like the way they did it, right? Whenever you make a card, like with Smothering Tithe, they screwed up a little because they're like, okay, well, let's make a card that is going to help white with ramping and whatnot. But because it was so easy to fit Smothering Tithe in any deck, that's just what happened, right? So all you're doing is helping all the multicolored decks that just happen to have white, right? Like every 5-color deck is going to want that card. Rumor Gatherer, I really like the way they did it. It's a little, first of all, I'll just say, feels very off color. It's an elf wizard, which is very weird in white. Elves are usually green, wizards are usually blue. Okay. So already that's kind of weird. It's scrying, which again, yeah, I guess every color scries, but feels like a blue ability. And of course, drawing cards typically feels like a blue or green ability. This card looks like it should be a Simic card. Like this card should be 1 blue green or something. That would be very fitting. However, it's a white card, whatever. You got the 2 white pips, first of all, right? Which I like. And again, a lot of people said this about Smothering Tithe, where Smothering Tithe should have had more white pips in it to restrict it. Like Smothering Tithe should have been 1 white, probably, or maybe even 3 white. And that would have been too cheap. 1 white. And it would have really made it hard for people to shoehorn it into a 5-color or even like a 3-color deck. It would have been tough, right? Even if they could cast it, they might not be able to cast it like on turn 4. They might not be able to get it out right away. I mean, Smothering Tithe, you can get out with a first turn Soul Ring, you can get a Smothering Tithe out turn 2, right? I mean, the casting cost there, I think they really is what they made a mistake with that card. The other thing though is whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, right? That's a very white feeling ability. I mean, it's a green sort of ability too. Obviously, this card goes in a lot of green decks. It's definitely going to go into my Shanna deck for sure, which is I make a lot of creature tokens, right? Which is particularly good here, and that's why this card I think is so fantastic. If this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, draw a card. So all you need is 2 creatures to come into play on your turn, including tokens, right? Just make 2 tokens on your turn, and you get this. You get to draw a card, which is fantastic. I think this is even better than Welcoming Vampire, maybe. Again, they're both restricted, right? They both cost 3 mana. They both have restrictions. I actually think that Rumor Gatherer fits in more decks than does Welcoming Vampire, because Welcoming Vampire, you really want to have a very good frequency of low-powered creatures, whereas with Rumor Gatherer, you just have a couple creatures enter the battlefield, right? And there are lots and lots of commanders out there. Even if we're just looking at mono white, there is a lot of commanders out there in mono white that are just creating creature tokens. There's a bunch that just create creature tokens when they attack or when they enter the battlefield. And it's going to be very easy for you to get this draw trigger on your turn every turn, I think. So this card for sure is a commander staple already. I think it might even be better than Welcoming Vampire. And I know a lot of people were losing their mind over that card. So a lot of people probably going to be losing their mind over this card as well. Again, I think white is okay for card draw already. I like the way they did this one though. All right. I'm not going to complain if they come out with more white card draw, but the way they did this and how it feels like it's, I like the limitation where you can't just shoehorn this into any deck, right? It's only gonna, like Esper Sentinel, for example. Again, Esper Sentinel has the same issue that Smothering Tithe is, where it's just 1 white mana, it fits in any deck, it fits in any strategy, so people are just throwing it in any deck. This is not the case, right? Rumor Gatherer is not just going to be thrown into any deck. It has to be a creature-heavy deck. And I think a lot of white decks are doing that. So it is a card that's going to fit with a lot of white strategies, which I like a lot. So that is it. Just 2 cards that right away, as soon as they were back to back. I saw the one and I was like, oh, wow, that is so good. That might be better than Swan Song, right? And then I saw Rumor Gatherer right after, and I'm like, oh man, that's pretty good too. So I thought I would make a video talking about them because they are both really, really fantastic. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.